Welcome back to my YouTube channel, everybody. Today, my guest is Malcolm Nance, who's very well known and is also featured for the fourth time on my channel. So, my viewers know Malcolm pretty well. Just to make a brief introduction, Malcolm, you're a former Navy senior chief petty officer. You're a counterterrorism expert. You're a military expert. And the most important thing, you're a longtime friend of mine. That's why we are here today. I haven't mentioned what we're going to talk about, but since last time I hosted you, which was before Trump's second presidency started, we talked about what to expect from Trump's second administration. Today, we're talking about what Trump has actually done during his almost first year, because we're still in November, so it's not a complete year yet. But what has President Trump been doing so far? Malcolm, thanks for your time and thanks for accepting my request once again.
Yeah, it's absolutely my pleasure. And the thing that this last year has taught me is I want to know personally, what did I do to the god Apollo to make me the Cassandra of the American people, to where everything I said happened, everything is true, all of my predictions came out, no one believes us. So, like Cassandra, she crossed the god Apollo. Apparently, I got him angry at me at some point.
You think so? Okay, we'll
It's
see.
gonna be.
We'll see who's stronger, if you or God Apollo. So, Malcolm,
He's winning.
you're a military expert, so let's start from the military stuff. So the
Mm.
Middle East apparently, allegedly, reached a ceasefire in the last weeks, and apparently President Donald Trump was the guy who made that possible. What are your thoughts about it? First off, is it gonna last?
Well, first off, there is not a ceasefire in the Middle East. I just want to clarify some things. There was an agreement to halt combat in exchange for a prisoner exchange. Donald Trump managed to get out by working with the Israelis and Hamas, by working behind the scenes against Israel. They were quite angry about this, by communicating with Hamas directly, to have gotten out the last of the living hostages, which was 20 hostages plus, I believe, 20 bodies of remains of people who were killed. The Hamas still has, I think, 6 or 7 remaining. But I just want to call attention that over a year and a half ago, President Joe Biden negotiated the release of 140 living hostages, including all of the female hostages and their remains. So, for all of these achievements that people are talking about, they come in a very narrow scope. That, Donald Trump says, "I did this," then it must be true. I'm grateful for the ceasefire, if that's what you want to call it. But almost within 24 hours, Israel started attacking positions and has reduced the occupational footprint of the land that Palestinians can be on to about 60% of what it was in the pre-war. Israel has occupied, by their own admission, they are taking 40% of the Gaza Strip as a de facto zone, encircling it all the way from the north, completely around Rafah to the south, and squeezing 2.2 million people into a very narrow zone. How that's going to work out is beyond me, because you have Donald Trump saying he's going to put us, making them walk to Jordan or Egypt to agree that anyone that wants to leave the Gaza Strip to another third country they can get into, they can leave, but they can never return. Trump saying that's ethnic cleansing and a war crime. So, when Donald Trump does it, I guess it's not. But it's been a very tough year in the Middle East. And certainly, one other thing, that war should have ended a year and a half ago. I have no idea how Israel is still fighting Hamas. That gives me the impression that they did not, in the first year, use all of the resources necessary to break Hamas as a military organization, and has allowed them to reconstitute as a low retrograde tactical organization using new manpower over the last second year and a half. So it's almost a disgrace that Israel hasn't ended this war.
Malcolm, we also saw before the release of hostages, the agreement for the release of hostages, that Trump was very supportive of Netanyahu. Do you think that was the right thing to do or the wrong thing to do?
Well, there's two reasons Trump is supportive of Netanyahu. One, these guys operate in what I called in my 2018 book the axis of autocrats. The world is shifting away from the democratic rules-based order to money-backed oligarchs who are backing autocrats and dictators. That's just the fact of the way the world is. And this is why Trump had this close personal relationship with Putin, with Orban, with Netanyahu as well. And it's funny because Trump wants to maintain that relationship with Erdogan of Turkey on one hand, and Netanyahu doesn't like that at all. So Netanyahu and Trump need each other. They're symbiotic dictators, if you want to put it that way. But Netanyahu is very popular in Israel. He's also very unpopular in Israel. And like Trump, he needed re-election to stay out of prison. He was under indictment for very broad-based corruption. So, but Israel needed, Israel needed the throw weight of the United States to destroy what they thought was the Iranian nuclear program. And unfortunately, we did it. We finally spent 25 years producing bombs that could hit the Iranian nuclear program, the Natanz and Ferdous nuclear weapons and storage and development facilities to seemingly no effect. They still have all their fissile material. They can replace centrifuges, but they have enough material that if they really wanted to go on a crash program, they could possibly detonate a crude atomic bomb, which would show everybody that symbiotic relationship between Trump and Netanyahu only increased the danger in the Middle East. But that hasn't happened yet. We'll see.
Well, Malcolm, let's talk about something a little bit west than Israel. Let's jump to Ukraine.
Sure.
So, what drives me
Sure.
mad here is
Perfect.
that Trump seems to agree with the last person he talks to. So, one day he talks to Putin and he proposes Zelensky that the Ukraine has to surrender some of the territory. Then he speaks to either the European leaders or Zelensky himself, and he says, "No, we're going to give weapons to Ukraine to defend itself." What's going on there? That's so confusing.
Yeah, it's schizophrenic in many different ways. I predicted that the United States would almost completely align with Russia. And in the first 2 months of his administration, that was on track, completely on track. You saw that we had, what is it, Secretary of whatever, Pete Hegseth, just because he thought the boss was shouting at Ukraine, he just cut their defense and intelligence ties off, just cut it off. But this is a guy, he's the equivalent of a National Guard Reserve major who has no reason to be in the office of the Secretary of Defense, which is a diplomatic and military position. And then Trump gets told by Zelensky, I want to buy your weapons. I have $50 billion of European money. Trump, listening to Putin, says no. Then a month later, Trump is saying, hey, Zelensky wants to buy our weapons. He's got $50 billion from European money. Let's sell him our weapons. It's schizophrenic. As you said, it's the last person in the room. But the person he listens to is Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, right? I mean, this guy understands the psychology of Donald Trump. I said this in our previous interview that this man is a KGB officer. He is a manipulator. It is his job to actually manipulate human beings into doing what he wants to do. He is a dictator, and Trump is jealous of that level of dictatorship. He's confined by laws. He's confined by the American body politic. If he had his way, he would just declare an American dictatorship, and he's essentially doing that. So Putin understands this, and this is why Putin would fly in, gets the red carpet treatment, where U.S. soldiers are laying down the red carpet for a KGB officer. And then Trump tries his, mafia boss strong arm tactics against the original global mafia boss. You can't, I mean, it's like some small time mafioso from Brooklyn going to Palermo at the height of the mafia wars and saying, I'm better than you. No, you're not. Okay. I mean, back in the old days in Palermo, the Guardia, not the Guardia Civil, the Italian police and
These
prosecutors, were deathly terrified of the mafia. Trump is working on this level. He doesn't seem to understand that he's dealing with a really skilled person who understands him, who reads him, studies him, has teams of psychologists evaluating him, and he knows all you have to do is tell him, Donald, I'll give you Trump Tower Moscow in a couple of years. And Trump will turn into a lapdog and do anything that he wants. Also, there are crazy people in the Oval Office. This is a professional intelligence assessment I'm giving. He has guys like Steve Miller. Stephen Miller is literally acting and taking the literal words of Joseph Goebbels and using them in speeches about devastating the American homeland and rounding up liberals, calling liberal in the Democratic Party in the United States a terrorist group that they will unleash the military on. I mean, the only thing he hasn't done, here's the kicker, okay? This reminds me of a great quote from the Humphrey Bogart movie Sahara in 1943, one of my favorite films. And the best character in that movie, besides Bogart, is an Italian. He's a captive, and he was captured, as Bogart's tank crew is out there. And he's in captivity with a German pilot. And the German pilot wants the Italian to come and kill the guard who has been very nice to them. And the Italian has relatives in Brooklyn. And the German says, it is your duty to fight against these people. You have to do it for Mussolini. You should do it for Hitler. And the Italian says, listen, these are good men, and I'm going on with them. He says, but we Italians are not like you Nazis. You can put us in black shirts. You can have us march around. Mussolini can act like a Hitler. He can talk like a Hitler. He can walk like a Hitler, but he cannot make us become a Hitler, right?
Sure.
Of course, the German kills him. To put my point into perspective, that what we have happening in the United States is Trump mimicking Orban and Putin, right? And his problem is the American people are like this Italian in the movie. They don't want this. You can act like them, you can walk like them, you can talk like them. That being said, you have the opposition, Putin, understanding all of this. Because he's an intellectual, he's smart, he's terrible at what he's doing in Ukraine. But he gets Trump to do what he wants when he wants it. And trust me, right now, all defense and intelligence cooperation with Ukraine is already quietly ending. Again, they're just not saying at this point. You know why? Because Zelensky, who is really Churchill here, right? He's the Humphrey Bogart in this story.
Yeah.
He understands, I'm going to have to start fighting without America. And he's building his own cruise missiles. He knew he was never getting the Tomahawks because Putin told him not to give it to him. So Trump is not giving it to him. Oh, also, did I mention Laura Loomer? We're going to talk a lot about her. She's crazy. She's this woman who is an influencer, blogger. We don't know. Maybe she's under the table with Trump. But every time she says something, he does it. She got the director of the National Security Agency and his deputy fired because she said he's part of the Biden's deep state. Fired. Guys, 25-year intelligence professional. The woman who was the deputy director was a 22-year career NSA professional. This is what's happening in the Oval Office. We have crazy people running the government.
Well, Ben, let me try to be positive. There's one thing I don't understand.
Good luck.
There's one thing I don't understand. So Trump wants to show off how strong and in control he is. So he cannot let Putin fool him around forever. At a certain point, he would have to say, okay, Vladimir, enough. Now we go my own way. Is that going to happen or not?
Good God, you're looking at this so conventionally. You're making the impression that Trump is his own man and actually can think like that. He does not. He
Okay.
does not think like that. He views everything on the basis of what you've done for him. And Putin flatters him. Putin speaks to him. Putin got Trump to the point where Trump went to Zelensky and said, "You will give up everything that has been captured since 2014, plus all of the remainder of Donbass and Luhansk provinces, which were never captured," which means the Ukrainian army would have to leave over, 1,000 square kilometers and surrender it to Putin. Zelensky walked out the room understanding, and he essentially told Trump, "I'm going to fight the war without you. We can do it," because the Russian army is in a very bad position right now. They just had thousands and thousands of men killed and captured in the vicinity of Pokrovsk. They did this big offensive. It got cut off, surrounded in 6 different places, and eliminated. The Russian line could collapse at any moment. Any moment. And then Putin may wake up and find the Ukrainians are back on the Russian border and that Crimea is completely 100% cut off, and that his army is the army of 1917. Maybe they go back to Moscow and overthrow the government.
Well, you're being more optimistic than I am.
I have to be. I mean, I've got people on the line. Just today, I was asked to come back in the Ukrainian army. So, they need experience and manpower, but they're winning. They're not losing. They're just, but they have the ability, the better equipment, and they're not losing at the level that Russia is.
Well, Malcolm, let's talk about something different, economy. So,
Something happier.
yeah, something happened. Trump's second administration started off with tariffs. Isn't that the dumbest thing a president can do? Because he's damaging his own people. He's not damaging us or Canada. He's damaging his own people because he's forcing them to pay more for something that they can have at a lower price. And also the quality is going to decrease if they have fewer choices. Am I being naive here?
No. Look, this started with a guy who's on his team named Navarro, who wrote a book 20 some years ago where he believed the exact opposite of how the American economy has worked since the Great Depression. He believes that the Smoot-Hawley tariffs of 1933, which crashed the entire global economy, were actually a good thing, and that it created this stimulus. He seems to forget about the Great Depression. Trump, when he was looking for an economic expert in this first administration, somebody told him about this guy. It was Jared Kushner. Told him about this guy. And from that day onward, Trump learned the word tariff and believes that tariffs are actually good. He refuses to believe anything else that he sees. And he views the fact that the global economy crashed. The US stock market went down 10,000 points in 72 hours, it's a crash, right? It just didn't hit the bottom. And then when he announced that he was going to lift the sanctions off of China, it shot back up, even though he didn't do it. It shot back up to almost the previous crash level. He now believes that's success. But what most people don't understand is what was actually happening. There was a massive corrupt insider trading. He was telling people that he was going to do these things, and they were betting and shorting the market and making tens and hundreds of millions of dollars off of these market fluctuations. He does not care about the rest of the world. He is the first American president since FDR that does not believe in the free market. He's acting sort of like Mao Zedong, right? He's acting like a Chinese communist with centralized direction where the leader determines where soybeans goes. He does not understand the meaning of the word tariff, and he refuses. He says it himself. He refuses to believe that a tariff is a tax passed on to the American consumer. And if it is, he doesn't care. He doesn't pay it. Right now, my electricity, because of this war with Canada, because I live in upstate New York, is going up 30% this year. And the Canadians are playing hardball. They're getting ready to leave the United States market and go global. They don't care. There's more money on the other two sides of the Atlantic and Pacific than there is in America with a crazy president.
Is it different I mean, are the tariffs imposed or allegedly imposed to Europe and South America different from those imposed to China or India? Because, for instance,
Well,
the Italian news said that tariffs imposed on China and India were aimed at discouraging these countries from buying Russian oil and gas. Is that
oh, that's
correct?
crazy. No, not at
Okay.
all. Not at all. He just single-handedly destroyed the American soybean industry. Single-handedly. It was going bad in his first administration. This administration, in September, China announced they are buying zero soybean from America, America's largest export crop. Zero, which means that it has nothing to do with oil. There's no protectionist thing here. He started with this tariffs thing by imposing tariffs on every nation in the world, but he is so economically ignorant, okay, that he seemed to think that a trade deficit meant that somebody was cheating
Yeah.
America and that the whole
Yeah.
world was cheating us. And he was giving Lesotho, right, which is in Swaziland, a 100% tariff because Lesotho was not buying 100% of products from the United States. They're a country, 50,000 people trapped in the center of South Africa. Biggest export is actually cow dung and fertilizer. And he doesn't understand it. Look, this man is an idiot. He is an economic idiot. And the United States right now is getting ready to go into full-scale recession. But to him, his friends are making money, therefore everything's great.
But did he give up about the plans to invade Canada, Greenland, and Panama? Because that was big discussion 1 year ago, but that kind of disappeared.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a joke. It wasn't a joke. When he met his first meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau earlier this year, Trudeau came out of that meeting and said they're serious. They are serious about annexing Canada. And when I went to Canada, my wife is Canadian,
Huh.
um, from Quebec. I said told Canadian News when he uses the word annex, that means he at some point intends to use force. And the way that it was explained when Carney met him, same thing. He said, we intend to break Canada economically. He is living in this fantasy world where he thinks America can just shut off everything to Canada and Canada will thrive. Well, let me tell you what's happening there. A 100% boycott of American products in Canada. You can't find anything in the
Mhm.
liquor stores in Canada. You can't buy American whiskey. You can't buy American products even at Costco. He doesn't understand. He's literally doing Chinese communism, right? Top down, state directed tariffs and economics. And it's bizarre because he literally eliminated the free market in the United States, which we created post World War II. It's amazing. We created the global free trade market in order to sell all of these excess products we had made in World War II, refrigerators, washers, dryers, instead of Jeeps and tanks. And Trump does not believe it. All he believes is if I personally am making money and my friends are making money, then that's good economics for me. He does not care what happens to the American public. He does not.
And the crazy thing is that Canada and the United States are the two most similar countries I've ever seen in my life. Because let's not forget that the World Series of Baseball last week was played between Los Angeles and Toronto. That's not an accident. I
That's
mean,
right.
Toronto and South Canada is very similar to the United States. I mean, there's almost no borders. So Trump doesn't
Oh,
really know
there's a
what he's
border
talking about.
now.
Oh,
There's
yeah,
a border
probably.
now. Yeah,
There's a
I just
border
crossed the
now.
border a few days ago. First question they asked me wasn't where do you live? It was, were you born in the United States? That's the first time I've ever been asked that in my entire life. And I'm over 60. There is a utter hostility towards foreigners in this country now, which is being directed by the president and is now being reflected at the borders. Canadians do not come to the United States. There's a
Oh, yeah.
75% drop in
Oh, yeah.
visitors. Las Vegas is empty. Canadians don't come there. everybody's having a grand old time in Canada. And I'm up there in elegant exile with a lot of other Americans who are renting beach houses or lake houses in Canada because they don't want to be in the United States.
I know. I mean, I travel to the United States quite often, and my Canadian cousins tell me the same thing. Why do you even go there? And I said,
Why?
okay, they have a mad president, but it doesn't cancel the fact that I like the culture there. Uh,
Sure. Well, just don't get caught up in it at the border.
yeah, absolutely. No, that didn't happen. So, Malcolm, let's go south. What's going on with Venezuela these
Good
days? Why are
God.
they shooting those ships? Are those really drug cartel ships, or is Trump just going berserk again?
Donald Trump apparently saw two movies, and someone put these movies into his head that this is actually happening in real life, not all of the intelligence-based information we've been doing for decades. For decades, we have been interdicting cocaine smuggling boats out of Colombia, Ecuador, and other small countries, mainly Colombia, of course, that have been bringing drugs to the United States on high-speed boats or been bringing them on submersibles, right? These small panga boats that you're seeing them destroy, they don't have the fuel capacity to get to the country right next to them. Trinidad and Tobago. We, in the past, would run drug interdiction operations with ships, helicopters, airplanes based on intelligence, where we would board them with the Coast Guard, seize the drugs, determine if they're actually drugs, and then, take the vessel and the personnel back to the country where they originated from, and they would go into their legal system. Apparently, Donald Trump has read the book or seen the Tom Clancy movie of Clear and Present Danger and thinks that the movie was about Maduro and not Pablo Escobar. And in that movie, the president sends CIA and military operatives secretly into that country. And in the book, the Air Force and the Navy start extrajudicially killing airplanes. They just start shooting airplanes out of the sky, not knowing what's in it or what's happening. They just start killing people. This is what Trump is doing. And he had this crazy speech a week ago where he said that we're going to stop fentanyl coming into the United States. 99.9% of all fentanyl comes into the United States through Mexico or through chemical precursors from China that could be combined to make fentanyl. Doesn't come from Canada, doesn't come from Venezuela. It's mainly in liquid forms. It's synthesized, into these batches. And if you want to know where a lot of the fentanyl in the United States comes from, trust me, when my late wife had cancer, I learned this comes from the doctors in the hospitals. At one point, I had 2 liters of liquid fentanyl prescribed at 2 different times in over 50 100 microgram fentanyl patches. I took it back to the hospital. And you know what one of the doctors said? He goes, that has a street value of about $200,000 of what you had here. And I said, you keep over prescribing. All right. And that's where these fentanyl patches come from that they kill themselves on hospitals. So our biggest problem is control of controlled substances. But Venezuela, he has killed over 65 people thus far. I haven't counted in the last day, so maybe it's over 70. And what's even crazier is he says that he is doing this because he can tell where a boat comes from. Well, the first boat, Trinidad and Tobago, is now saying that those were just migrant workers that shuttled back and forth from that town with regularity, no drug smugglers, which is why it had 13 people on board. Drug boats generally have no more than 2 people on board. The semi-submersible submarines, those came from Colombia. He sank those. Okay, well, we board those things all the time. But I just don't. By the way, we have more U.S. forces coming right now when the USS Gerald Ford and its battle group arrives there in the next week or so, or because it was off Italy, it was off Naples last week. It has to transit the entire Atlantic to get down to the Caribbean. We will have had more naval firepower than we had in the war against Yemen and Iran. What does that tell you? It means we are going to war with Venezuela. We don't just send that stuff down for fun. Um, People are talking in his ear that he has to do this. And it's pantomime, but I'm not seeing any reason there should be a war with Venezuela. And Iran, Russia, China may be running to secretly bring weapons to them right now that could give us a lot of surprises if we attack them.
But do you think that he chose Venezuela because it's an oil exporting country?
Yes, because it has the largest reserves of oil in the world, larger than Saudi Arabia. And then flash forward to the crazy talk he was doing this week about declaring war on Nigeria,
Yeah.
another
Oh, yeah.
major OPEC country, where this came from Laura Loomer, who is a crazy, I'm using this as a technical intelligence term, batshit crazy, mentally ill woman who got into his head that there is a genocide of Christians happening in Nigeria. No, there is a terrorism war that's been happening in Nigeria for the last 25 years. And if you want to go back to genocide, 1969 with the Biafra conflict, they were really killing people in earnest there. But Donald Trump is the person who stopped all U.S. counterterrorism cooperation with Nigeria. And so now he gets into his head that in northern Nigeria, Boko Haram and Fulani Muslim bandits are up there stealing cows and killing people. They are disproportionately killing more Muslims than they are killing Christians. But the phrase got into his head, and the next day, Pete Hegseth is saying, I'm preparing U.S. forces for imminent attacks on Nigeria, a country with 230 million people. If I sound frustrated, it's because as an intelligence professional, this is crazy.
You sound frustrated because you are. So, but what's going on inside the U.S. cities?
Okay, that's okay. I'm going to ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Okay, I want you to give this a moment's thought because we got to reach back into a historical situation. When is the last time the Italians had a really, really good showing in the World Cup?
19 years ago when we won.
Okay. Did Italy go crazy? Did they have like parties in the streets
Sure.
and civil unrest?
Civil arrest, I'm not sure. Parties, definitely.
Civil
Civil arrest,
disobedience,
probably.
all these things. Here's what's happening in America. There is nothing happening in the United States. Zero. Nothing. The United States is operating as normal. You could fly to any of these cities he's talking to. And what's happening is Donald Trump has brought armed soldiers into the streets of American cities. In Los Angeles, the protests were confined to one city block. In Portland, where they're coming out in inflatable animal costumes, it's confined to a 300-meter area in front of a holding facility. In Chicago, nothing. I'm sorry, I'm gonna, I am frustrated because I'm going to tell you right now, the United States is now operating a organization we called a Geheimstaatspolizei in World War II, which is German for State Secret Police, which has an acronym of Gestapo.
Yeah.
The United States is operating a Gestapo. ICE is now about to become the largest law enforcement body in America. It has a budget now bigger than the United States Marine Corps, which is a combat force of 180,000 armed men and women with its own air force. ICE has an air force, which is flying Predator surveillance drones over U.S. cities. They are kidnapping people on the streets. They don't care whether you're a U.S. citizen or not. There have been over 170 U.S. citizens detained by ICE. And they now are snatching protesters by saying, if you say bad words to them, that is disrupting a police activity. We are in a very bad place here. I'm saying if this were Burundi or Namibia, I would be giving this same assessment. I've worked against, Saddam Hussein. Libya, Uganda, all these other third world dictatorships, the United States now has a secret police. Black shirts, if you Italians would like a equivalent thing here. The only thing they haven't done is they haven't turned the army into that force. And all of the violence you're seeing is coming from the ICE. And let me tell you, I work with a lot of pro-democracy groups here in the United States. If we win the next election and get control of Congress, and we look like we're going to take, the United States presidency back in 2028, which we have a very good chance with Gavin Newsom, ICE is going to be disbanded on day one. Day one, we will freeze 30,000 men and we will bring them all to trial. That organization is out of control. And as an American citizen, it is disgraceful. We have never in the history of the United States had a secret police, and we do now.
So talking about militarizing the cities, the first one after LA was Washington, D.C. I was in D.C. 2 years ago, and nothing out of control seemed to be going on. Like it was a normal city, okay? You don't want to get alone at dark in bad areas, such as Baltimore or other bad neighborhoods, but downtown D.C. was beautiful.
And it still is. And the only thing you have now is it's beautiful, but you have armed soldiers walking the streets. I want you to imagine for 1 minute, that maybe not your current prime minister, but you get a Berlusconi 2.0. And you wake up one morning and he says, Rome is completely out of control. I have, I've deployed the Alpini and the Inquisori to start patrolling the streets and arresting any Italian citizen we think is committing a crime. Oh, and by the way, he's the guy who would say we're gonna take the Carabinieri, and they are not allowed to do it. We're going to take every Carabinieri in the country, and we're going to assign them to these military people, so that there are no more investigations, no more police patrolling. They are now just regular cops. Your country would go into rebellion. Okay, I've lived in Italy long enough to know you cannot disrespect organizations like this and expect your country to just go along with that. You'll be having fights in Parliament. In the United States, that's what Trump has done. But he only did it in Washington because Washington falls under federal control.
Yeah.
I went to Washington as part of the resistance groups there, and you know what I did? We stayed at Union Station where most of the troops were, and we started playing the speech by General Milley, the speech that says, we do not take an oath to a king. We do not take an oath to a queen. We do not take an oath to a dictator, and we do not take an oath to a wannabe dictator. We take an oath to the Constitution of the United States. We have groups out there right now that are following soldiers and reminding them all day and all night. One night we played it nonstop for 18 hours because the soldiers were there. And until the soldiers left, we played that speech over and over to remind them they don't work for Donald Trump. They swear their oath to the Constitution of the United States. And Trump is having a hard time understanding this, which is why he is using his secret police.
Well, Malcolm, a couple of months ago, I heard the speech by Bill de Blasio here in my town, and he was very optimistic because he said that this Trump craze cannot last long because his power will decrease with the midterms elections, and then whoever comes next is not Trump. He even said that J.D. Vance the sentence was, J.D. Vance is a smart guy. He is not Trump. So what do you see for the future?
Well, first off, can I point out Bill de Blasio is not in office? Okay, that's a very pie in the sky assessment of things.
Of course.
As an intelligence professional, I have to call it like it is. I can't work on the presumption that we will have an election next year. You heard that he directed the Secretary of War. I put that in quotes because that's not a legal position. By law, since 1947, the name is Secretary of Defense. So he's living this little fantasy that he has a war secretary. But the Secretary of War ordering the United States National Guard to start assault troops, quick reaction forces in every 50 states in the United States that must be ready and in position by April of this year when we hold our democratic primary elections running up to this thing. Look, I'm sorry. If again, I can only call this like I see it. If I were to watch this in Libya, I would call them shock troops. The problem is in America, the National Guardsmen are 40% black and minority. They don't want this job. They are not going to follow orders. If they've been ordered, they're talking plans in the White House to put the National Guard at all polling places. This is against the law in America. Even cops can't be at polling places. It's intimidation. He is trying to seize control of this. And I think that if he loses, he'll just take control of it. He is a fucking dictator. And I am using that professionally. I have seen them in this world. This man is talking every day like he wants to eliminate the Constitution of the United States. He said it 2 years ago. He sees parts of the Constitution as part of his problem, and that he as president should be able to not follow it if he thought so. And then the Supreme Court gives him the power of a king, which in the United States, we had a revolution against the king. And America is not, and by the way, America is not in Nazi Germany 1933, like a lot of people say. We are in Boston, Massachusetts, 1774, when King George passed the Intolerable Acts, which it disbanded our representation, forced tariffs on us for tea, and essentially told us that we will follow the rules of a king from the other side of the ocean. That caused the American Revolution.
Well, Malcolm, thanks for your time. I think we touched all the main topics that we had to discuss to cover the first year of Trump's second administration. And I think that everyone who's watching this video can have a clearer view of what happens, also because even the Italian news sometimes gives pretty confusing interpretations, as I told you.
Good. Well, I hope across the bottom you have the interpretation in Italian. And so that your viewing audience can also understand. We're very concerned back here in the United States. If you want to come visit any U.S. city, go ahead. It's awesome. Nothing's going on in America, except the fact that J.D. Vance said, if you stay one day past your visa, they will arrest you, put you in a prison. They will deport you to a country that is not Italy, and they will ban you from returning to the United States for life.
Which is pretty severe. But I can confirm that I've been to the U.S. in the last 4 years in a row, and everything is beautiful. There's
great. No problem except the White House.
Yeah, even the White House was nice from outside, but actually Joe Biden was there when I came, so it was totally different.
He's a nice guy. That's why.
It's totally different.
Okay.
Thanks everybody else for watching this video, guys, and I'll see you all next time. Bye bye.
Yeah, saluti tutti. Bye.